Your Prime Minister, as it happens, my Prime Minister as well, Trudeau made a campaign pledge to keep Canada's fiscal deficit at no more than $25 billion. A pledge already broken, as it happens, by your first budget. What message, we're here in New York City, what message does that send to investors, particularly foreign investors whom you need to buy Government of Canada bonds?
Well, I think the message we want foreign investors to have, which is the same message we want Canadians to have, is that we are focused on growth. We're focused on growth that's going to help Canadians. So clearly, our agenda is to help middle-class Canadians to succeed after a challenging era. But importantly, we want to help them in the next generation. So we've made a commitment to growing the economy. It's something that we know will make a difference for the next generation. And for investors, we know that they want to see an economy that's going to grow at a healthy pace over the long term. And that's exactly what we're setting out to do.
We're talking about Canada here, though. Canada is the country that taught the English-speaking world how to be fiscally responsible, how to run balanced budgets. And Standard & Poor's and Moody's rewarded Canada by restoring its AAA credit rating. What if they don't agree with the pro-growth agenda?
Well, I think they're going to agree, because what we've said we're going to do is be prudent along the way. So we are blessed in Canada with a particularly good situation. We've been able to make decisions over time that have lowered our net debt to GDP. So Canada, among the G7 countries, has the lowest net debt to GDP, which gives us the most capacity to make investments to grow the economy. So Canadians told us they wanted us to invest to grow the economy. But importantly, the IMF, the OECD, and when I sit around the table with G20 countries, they're recognizing that in an era of low growth, in an era of demographic change, what we should be doing is making investments, using fiscal measures in order to really grow the economy. So we are getting Canadians on board, we are getting international observers on board, and I'm confident that investors in Canadian bonds are going to be supportive, because we're going to enhance the long-term trajectory of our country.
You're not afraid of the bond vigilantes?
We're in fact embracing all people who look towards how can Canada be more successful in the future, and we know that having not only a better infrastructure which helps people in the country, but also goods and services to get to market, creating a more innovative environment and creating a plan for growing businesses. This is going to really help Canadians, and it's going to put us on a world stage as a country that's taking the decisions that can really make a difference.
Well, let's talk about that world stage and the commitment to investment. The developed world, as we know, is stuck in a slow growth gear. Interest rates are at or near the zero bound, and there's some questions about the efficacy of unorthodox monetary policy. Is it safe to say, based looking at this budget, that you and your government believe that spending is the only way to kickstart an economy like Canada's at this point?
Well, let me step back and say, first of all, we don't call it spending. What we're doing is we're making investments in the future of our country. So there are places where those investments might look like spending, but investing in education for Indigenous people, this is something that's going to help more people in our workforce over the longer term. We would say that, yes, we need to be doing things that are going to enhance our growth. Fiscal measures are really a prescription for what we should be doing, given the Canadian situation, the low interest rates you mentioned, our capacity to make investments, and our ability with a very educated workforce to take advantage of a more innovative society is a positive thing for us.
Would it help Canada's growth trajectory, and for that matter, the rest of the developed and developing world, if other countries like the United States, for example, or the UK were not so fiscally conservative?
Well, we recognize that every country is in a different situation.
Sure.
So, again, our capacity is very positive because of where we are in terms of
I guess what I'm trying to say is, would you like to see them doing what you're doing?
We do believe that taking fiscal measures is appropriate in the face of a low-growth environment. And that's something that we'll be talking about at the G20, taking the decisions that governments can take in order to enhance the productive capacity of their country, but also to help the next generation of, in our case, Canadians to be more successful. And obviously that's a discussion, and each country will have a different situation in terms of how they can execute on that.
Mr. Minister, your budget adds $4.5 billion in new child subsidies, introduces means testing, Is income redistribution the only way to really, truly address the inequality problem?
Well, from our point of view, we look back over the last generation and realize that middle-class Canadians have not been as successful as they might have hoped based on the growth in our economy. So that's just a fact that we want to deal with. We believe that finding ways to enhance their ability to spend on their family is not only going to help them, which is very important, but also going to actually help our economy. So someone who's a middle-income Canadian getting, in our case, on average, $2,300 more in child benefits for the 9 out of 10 families that benefit from the way we've done this. They're going to put that money back into the economy. So good for them, good for the economy, and over time that'll help our growth. So we think that it's about helping people, yes, and helping the next generation by having a more productive and more successful economy.
Philosophically, do you agree with the point on inequality, that that's how it should be done?
Well, philosophically, we agree that having a country that enables all people to be successful is important. So if we have a country where the middle class isn't able to grow their incomes, then that's not okay, because we're able to grow our economy. We need to make sure that it's inclusive growth, and that's what we're working towards.
One conspicuous absence in the budget is money for Bombardier. Why?
Well, in our budget, what we've done is we've taken a look at how we can deal with the economy broadly. That includes thinking about an innovation agenda, which we're going to spend more time on over the course of this year. In the case of one of our sectors, the aerospace sector, it's a critically important industry to us. We've been very successful. Bombardier has been a very successful company in that. Their new jet series is the C Series. I want to say to anybody out there considering buying it, is a great jet. What we're doing right now is we're doing some due diligence on a request that Bombardier has put forward around government coming along with them in that C Series, and we've not finished that due diligence yet.
You came out of business, Mr. Minister, so you understand the issues that concern investors and, for that matter, taxpayers. Would you attach conditionality to financing or funding from Bombardier that would require the demolition, let's say, of the dual-class share structure? Because otherwise, you know what taxpayers are going to think. They're going to say the Canadian government is subsidizing a very wealthy family that has a controlling interest in that company.
I think Canadians expect us to do our due diligence around the proposition that's been put before us, to consider different alternatives and how we can make investments. So that needs to consider how we can ensure that we have employment in the country in the aerospace sector. It needs to consider how we can ensure that we continue to be successful, including Bombardier. So we're going to consider all of those issues as we go through our due diligence, and it's really preliminary for me to talk about any specific decisions that we might get to in that
Very
regard.
quickly, because we do have to run, how long until that due diligence is done?
We don't have an exact timeline on that, so I know you'd like a deadline, but we think in order to do our work properly, we need to work through and understand the issues, and we're doing that, and when we have results, we'll come back to Canadians.